Before this moment existed, it was already being arranged for you, not by the casual motion of chance, not by the indifferent machinery of an algorithm responding to your habits, by something older than those things, something that has been moving on your behalf since long before you understood that movement was possible. You are here because the hour required it. You are here because whatever you have been carrying through the seasons behind you has finally reached the weight it was always being prepared to carry. And now, in this stillness, the word that was written over you before your name was spoken aloud is finally ready to be heard. Not everyone who encounters this message will receive it. There are those who will read the opening lines and feel nothing, no stirring, no recognition, no quiet alarm in the chest that says this belongs to you. And that silence in them is its own answer. This was not assembled for the masses. It was assembled for the specific soul who has been walking a road most people around them cannot see, carrying an assignment most people around them cannot feel, and wondering in the long quiet hours whether any of it is real. If that is you, do not move. What is about to be spoken over you has been waiting for this exact moment to arrive. The first unveiling, the weariness of the consecrated, chosen one. I will not begin gently. You have been handled gently for too long. The careful words, the slow approaches, the tender management of your feelings by people who sensed they were touching something fragile. But you are not fragile, you are weighted, and there is a profound difference between the two. So let me ask the thing. No one has asked you directly, how long have you been carrying this particular kind of tired? Not the tiredness that comes from labor or loss, though you have known both. The tiredness I am naming is more ancient than that. It is the weariness that descends upon those who are built to perceive at a frequency the world around them was not tuned to receive. It is the exhaustion of walking into rooms and immediately reading what every soul in that room is actually carrying beneath the face they are wearing for the occasion. The weight of knowing without being told who is performing and who is genuine, who is at peace and who is silently unraveling, who came in hungry for something they have not admitted wanting. You carry that information constantly. You carry it alone, because there is no one in the room to whom you can pass it. This is the weariness of the consecrated, the ones upon whom a seeing was placed before they were old enough to name it. You did not choose to feel at this depth. You did not train yourself into this sensitivity. It was written into you before you drew your first breath, as part of the architecture of what you were made to do. And the cost of carrying that architecture inside ordinary structures, inside rooms and relationships and systems that were built for a different frequency entirely, is a tiredness that no amount of rest can fully address. Because it is not the body that is weary, it is the soul that has been asked to operate continuously below its native altitude. I want to speak a word of divine clarity over that weariness right now. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. That was not an invitation extended to the casually fatigued. That was spoken directly to the ones carrying more than the ordinary frame was designed to hold. To you, the rest that was promised is not the rest of ceasing. It is the rest of arriving somewhere that was built for what you carry. The second unveiling, the thing that cannot be translated. There is something you have tried to transfer to other people, and it has never survived the crossing. You have sat across from those who love you, those leaning in with genuine desire to understand, and you have tried to give them the thing. You assembled the words carefully, offered them across the distance between two people, and watched what arrived on the other side come out simplified, flattened into something technically accurate that missed the actual substance by just enough that the version they received and the thing you were trying to give bear the same name and almost no resemblance. So you say, yes, that is it, and you file the real thing away again, and you feel more alone in that moment than before you tried. The reason it cannot be translated is not a failure of language. The reason it cannot be translated is that it was never meant to be carried in language. It was placed in you as lived experience, as a way of being in the world, as a mode of perceiving that operates simultaneously on levels that most people move through one at a time. You read the spoken and the unspoken in the same breath. You feel the current running beneath a conversation while you are still responding to its surface. You know things about people before the evidence has arrived to justify the knowing, and the knowing is almost always right. And you have learned at great cost that most people are not prepared to meet that knowing when it looks them in the face. This is the ancient gift of discernment. The prophets carried it. The intercessors carry it. The ones set apart before the foundation of the world carry it. It is not a personality trait. It is an anointing. And like all anointings, it carries a price. You will be fluent in a language most of the people around you do not speak. That is the loneliness of the consecrated in seasons where their purpose has not yet fully opened. But hear this: the inability of others to receive what you carry is not evidence that what you carry is not real. The failure was architectural, not elemental. You are elemental. The rooms were simply not built with windows facing your direction. If this is reaching the place in you that has been waiting to be reached, let the universe hear you. Drop 444 in the comments right now. That number carries a frequency of divine protection, of angelic presence, of the heavenly order that surrounds and upholds those who have been set apart. Let it be your declaration that the word being spoken here has found its mark. The third unveiling. Why the room falls quiet when you enter. You have noticed it, the atmospheric shift that happens when you arrive in a space. The recalibration that occurs without your asking for it, without your doing anything to produce it. The way eyes move in your direction in the breath before conversation resumes. The way certain people go slightly more careful in their words, slightly more precise in their movements, as though they are suddenly aware that the usual looseness is not available to them in the way it was one moment before. This is not your imagination. This is not a projection born from self-consciousness. This is the visible effect of an invisible reality. And that reality is this: the spirit that is upon you is recognized by every spirit it encounters before a single word is exchanged. Spirit knows spirit, light knows light. The anointing upon you announces itself to the spiritual atmosphere of every room you enter, and the room responds according to what each person within it is actually carrying at the level of soul. The ones drawn toward you do not know how to name the pull. They stay longer than they planned. They say things they did not expect to say, because in your presence the usual social performance becomes less necessary, and the relief of that is more than they anticipated. These are the ones who were sent to you, placed in your path by a divine order that knew, long before either of you arrived in that room, that the meeting was necessary. The ones who tighten are something else entirely. They are souls who have spent years building an interior architecture around a particular agreement about what is real. And your presence, simply by being genuine in a way they have not permitted themselves to be, creates a fracture in that agreement. You are not presenting an argument. You are simply being what you are. But what you are is itself a mirror. And some people cannot bear what a true mirror shows them. So they withdraw, or they test, or they talk over you, and then seek your counsel in private, where no one will observe the contradiction. All of this is the spiritual friction of a lesser frequency encountering a greater one. The greater frequency does not need to assert itself. It simply needs to remain. The cosmos does not apologize for what it placed in you. Neither should you. The fourth unveiling, the false names spoken over you. Chosen one. What I am about to name requires you to look directly at a wound. Most people have only ever seen from the side. This wound was administered slowly by people who were sometimes close to you through words offered as truth when they were actually testimony to the discomfort you provoked in those who offered them. You were given false names, not in ceremony, not with obvious malice, but across years and in accumulation, through repeated labeling by those who could not sit comfortably inside what your presence revealed about themselves. You were assigned names that did not belong to you, and because they came from people whose opinion mattered, and because they arrived often enough to feel like evidence, you began slowly and in secret. To answer to them, they called you too sensitive. What they were describing was their own numbness encountering its counterpart, and finding the contrast intolerable. You were not too sensitive. You were calibrated for the level of living that the consecrated are meant for. That calibration is not a deficiency. It is a divine instrument. They called you difficult. What they were experiencing was the failure of their usual methods of influence. Flattery could not redirect you. Social pressure could not move you from what you knew was true. Manipulation required more effort with you than it was worth. They called that difficult because it was difficult for them. What it actually was integrity that had not yet learned to apologize for existing. They called you cold. What they were interpreting as coldness was your refusal to perform warmth. You were not feeling when they required it. You could disagree without dismantling yourself in the process. To those who read accommodation as kindness, the absence of accommodation reads as coldness. What it actually is sovereignty over your own interior life. Before any of those names were spoken over you, the true name was already written. You are fearfully and wonderfully made, not approximately, not adequately, fearfully, wonderfully. The fear in that word is holy fear, the kind that attends the creation of something whose scope exceeds ordinary comprehension. That inscription was placed before the first voice ever called you too much. It remains unchanged after the last. Not one syllable spoken over you in seasons of misidentification has had the divine authority to alter what was written at the beginning. The trying cost you something real. The quiet erosion of your ability to trust your own perception after enough people called that perception excessive. That cost was real. But hear this. A wound is not a verdict. The instrument was never broken. It was silenced. And what is silenced can be restored. The restoration is already in motion. The fifth unveiling. The doors the cosmos closed on your behalf. I want to speak now about every time you arrived at something that seemed right and found the entrance sealed against you. Every opportunity that closed before you could fully enter it. Every relationship that dissolved before it became what you had hoped it would become. Every community where you tried for belonging and found the architecture did not fit the shape you actually are. Every version of your life that you began constructing and then had to stand and watch come apart. In every one of those closures, the interpretation most immediately available to you was the wounding one. That something about you was not sufficient, that you had miscalculated what was possible, that the vision you were carrying was larger than the life available to you. And the gap between them was evidence of something wrong in your original reading. I am here to offer you the cosmic reading of those events. Every door that the universe closed against you was an act of covenant protection. The opportunity that would have kept you occupied but diminished, kept you comfortable but static, kept you visible but fundamentally off assignment. That door was closed by the same hand that wrote your purpose. The relationship that would have required you to remain small in order for the other person to remain comfortable was dissolved by the same intelligence that knew what you were going to be asked to carry in the season that followed. The community that could not absorb you was not built for what you carry, and the exits arranged from those spaces were not failures of your belonging. They were the cosmos redirecting you toward the belonging that was actually written for you. He said it with the full weight of divine certainty. I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Those words were not spoken into prosperity. They were spoken into the ruins, into the season of sitting amid the wreckage of what had fallen apart, surrounded by the evidence of loss, unable to see the thing that was being assembled in the place the loss had cleared. The promise was never that the ruins were not real. The promise was that the ruins were not the final architecture. The universe was clearing ground. The trajectory is not random. The sovereignty behind it is not absent. Every exit was the cosmos saying, not here, not this, not yet, because what is written for you cannot be entered from the wrong direction. The sixth unveiling. The loneliness of the anointed in the midst of the ordinary. This is the word that most voices in this space will not speak plainly, because it touches an ache that people in your position have learned to carry silently, having been told once or more than once that to name it is ungrateful. So I am going to name it for you in the full hearing of heaven, so that you no longer have to carry it in silence. You can be surrounded and still be completely, essentially alone. Not alone in the way that is visible from the outside, not absent from relationships, not withdrawn from community or conversation. You show up, you engage, you offer what the room can receive, and you receive what is offered back. And from a certain distance, the picture looks like connection. But you know, in the interior place that sees clearly, that what is being exchanged in most of your interactions is a version of you. A calibrated version. A version carefully constructed to fit within the dimensions of what the relationship or the room can actually hold. The whole of you lives somewhere else. You have kept it there not from shame, but from hard-won understanding that offering the whole of you into spaces not built to receive it produces a specific kind of damage. You have offered the real thing and watched it be mishandled. Not with cruelty, but with the carelessness of those who did not understand what they were holding. They moved past the thing you most needed them to stay with. They offered solutions when you needed witness, and so you learned to measure the capacity of each space before you risked the full depth of what you are. That measuring accumulates a specific loneliness that most people around you have no framework for understanding. It is the loneliness of the anointed in the midst of the ordinary, not born from rejection, born from the absence of correspondence, from being in a frequency the surrounding environment was not designed to return. You are not broken for carrying that ache. You are not dramatic for naming it. You are a soul of a particular depth, and depth requires corresponding depth in return. What you have been given in the absence of it is not waste. The ache has been shaping the capacity to recognize the real thing when it arrives. The people who are meant to know you fully are either already in your orbit, or they are being drawn by the same frequency that has broadcast from you through every season of silence. You are not failing. You are being prepared for the correspondence that was always written for you. Give this a like if you have been carrying this particular ache and needed to hear it named. What you feel is real. The cosmos sees it. The answer is already in motion. The seventh unveiling, the ancient knowing they called paranoia. There is a faculty in you that operates prior to reason. before analysis, before evidence, before the gathering of proof that other people would require, before they would be willing to trust the same conclusion. It moves in you at the speed of recognition rather than the speed of logic. And it has been right far more often than the people who told you to ignore it would like to acknowledge. You walk into an arrangement, and something in you goes still and watchful before a single word has been exchanged. You receive a kindness and feel in the interior place that does not lie, that the kindness has a condition attached to it that has not been disclosed. You sit in a gathering that presents itself as safe and know through the same faculty that reads weather in the atmosphere before it arrives, that something in the structure of that gathering is not what it claims. You sense these things, you sense them clearly, and you have been systematically instructed to silence that sensing by people who needed you not to sense clearly in their vicinity. They called it paranoia. They called it anxiety. They built a case for its being a wound from your past rather than a gift for your future, because the language of wounding could convince you to override it. And a version of you that overrides your own perception can be managed in ways that a version of you who trusts their seeing cannot. The truth is older than their naming of it. This is the spirit of discernment, placed in you by the same authority that commissioned your assignment. Your assignment requires you to navigate territories where what is visible on the surface and what is actually moving beneath it are not the same thing. The enemy of the anointed always tries first to convince the anointed that their anointing is a malfunction. It is not a malfunction, it never was. The sacred protocol for carrying this gift is neither announcement nor argument. You do not need to perform what you perceive. You do not need to build the case and present it to the room. The cosmos does not require you to win the debate about what you know. It requires only that you allow what you know to govern how you move, which doors you enter and which you pass, which invitations you receive and which you set aside, which voices you bring close and which you keep at a respectful distance. The quiet sovereignty of living by what you sense without performing it and without defending it is one of the most powerful expressions of the anointing you carry. The eighth unveiling, the grief the sacred cannot skip. Chosen one, I will not move past this too quickly, because I have seen too many of the anointed suffer the long-term cost of moving past it too quickly. The empowering portion of the message will come, but before it comes, this must be received in full. There is grief in your story, not the managed grief of difficult seasons that eventually resolved into lessons, real grief. The grief of things that were supposed to happen and did not. The grief of people who were supposed to be capable of holding what you offered them and could not. The grief of a version of your life that you could see clearly and were moving toward, and then watched disassemble faster than you could understand, leaving you standing in the architecture of a future that was no longer available to you. That grief is not small, and it is not a sign of insufficient faith, and it is not something the anointed are required to convert immediately into gratitude. It is sacred weight. It belongs to the full accounting of what this path has cost you, and the full accounting must be honored before the next chapter can be fully entered. There is a second grief that runs even more quietly. The grief of the people you have had to leave behind, not in hostility, simply in the organic movement of a soul whose growth carried it in a direction the relationship was not built to travel. You still carry love for those people, but you have come to understand that return is no longer possible without a cost you are no longer able to pay. Going back would require you to become again what you were in the season they knew you, and that version has been superseded by what the pressure and the silence produced. Going back would require you to betray what the fire made. The grief of outgrowing someone you genuinely love is not smaller for being necessary. Honor it. Let it move through you at the pace it actually moves. Trust that what the path has cost you is being held by the same hands that are building what the path is moving you toward. You were not asked to be unfeeling. You were asked to be faithful. Those are not the same thing. The most faithful thing you can do with the grief is let it be real. The 9th unveiling. The appointed hour is upon you. Chosen one, I want to speak about a specific kind of moment, one that has no drama in it and no visible landmark, that cannot be photographed and will not be recognized by the people around you as significant, and yet is one of the most sacred junctures in the life of a soul moving toward its appointed work. You may be standing in that moment right now. It is the moment of completed preparation before visible manifestation. The moment when everything that was supposed to be built on the interior has been built. Every false narrative dismantled. Every borrowed identity released. Every wound that needed to be visited and witnessed and allowed its full weight has been allowed that weight. And yet, the exterior of your life has not yet visibly caught up to reflect what has been completed inside you. The inside of the vessel has been made ready. The filling has not yet arrived, and the gap between those two realities can look, from where you are standing, like nothing. Like stagnation. Like the stillness of something that has stopped, rather than the stillness of something that is poised. It is not stagnation, it is gestation. It is the sacred pause before the appointed hour opens. The word of the living God speaks directly to this moment. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Not can you prove it to the people in your life who have not been walking with you through the interior work. Not can you point to the external evidence that would satisfy a skeptic. Simply, do you not perceive it? Because there is something that belongs only to you, that quiet sub-frequency beneath the visible surface of your life that has already registered the shift that the visible world has not yet reflected. You have been feeling it and then overriding the feeling, because you have been trained by previous seasons of hoping too early to be cautious with hope. But this is not too early. This is the appointed time, and the perceiving is the first act of the receiving. The arrangement around you is already in motion. The right people are already being positioned. The doors that were meant to open are already beginning to move on hinges you cannot yet see. The frequency you have been broadcasting through every season of refinement is already reaching the ears and the spirits that were built to recognize it. The harvest of everything that was sown in silence is not coming. It is already arriving. The only question is whether you will allow yourself to perceive it before you can prove it. You are standing at the threshold of your appointed time. If you feel that, declare it. Leave 444 in the comments. Not as a number, as a covenant declaration. As the voice of your spirit saying to the heavens and to the earth, I am here. The work was real. The season is complete. I am no longer asking permission to step into what was written for me before my name was spoken aloud. The 10th unveiling, what is owed to the soul that endured. I want to speak directly to the version of you that is still waiting for permission from somewhere outside yourself, before it will allow the full weight of your purpose to be inhabited. There are things you have been withholding from yourself. From a long habituation to a kind of spiritual smallness imposed on you from the outside, that gradually became so familiar, you began to mistake it for wisdom. That management of yourself downward was a survival strategy. It served you in seasons where the alternative was constant friction with environments that could not receive you. But the season of survival strategy is giving way to something else, and the habits of the old season will not serve the demands of the new one. The permission you have been waiting for is not in transit from somewhere outside you. It was never located there. The only authority that can release you into the fullness of what you were commissioned to carry is the authority placed inside you at the beginning. That authority has been waiting, with the patient certainty of something that knows it will eventually be heard, for you to stop turning outward for what was always meant to be found within. You owe yourself the interior decision, the one not announced, not performed, not submitted to any room for endorsement. The decision made in the quiet between you and the God who commissioned you, that what you have been sensing about your purpose is real, that the version of you managed carefully downward to prevent friction is the one that was always meant to walk at full height. You owe yourself the relationships where the calculation disappears, where the whole of what you are is not a risk but a recognition. Those relationships are not fantasies, they are the correspondence the anointed were always intended to find, but they require you to stop settling for arrangements where you are only partly present, because partial presence signals to the universe that partial is what you expect. The most difficult form of obedience that exists is not outward conformity to rules. It is the obedience of becoming what you were actually made to be, fully and without apology, in the face of every voice that preferred a version of you they could more easily contain, the 11th unveiling. The life that was written before you could read it. Chosen one. I want you to arrive at this final word with every layer of yourself present, not the composed version. The part of you that came here because something needed to move, and something in you knew it. The life that is waiting for you is not constructed in the imagination of your best days. It is the life inscribed for you before your first season on this earth. Held back, not because you were insufficient, but because the version of you walking through the years behind you was not yet the version commissioned to carry it. The inscribed life requires an inscribed person. That person is standing at the threshold right now. It includes people who will know the full weight of what you carry and receive that knowledge as privilege. It includes work that requires what you have been quietly building through every season of refinement. It includes a dwelling within your own soul that is not adversarial to itself, not in perpetual negotiation between what you are and what available spaces required you to perform, but honest and present and at peace. It also includes the cost of the anointed. The life you were made for is not emptied of challenge. The depth that made you feel out of place in the wrong rooms will make you irreplaceable in the right ones. The weight will be real. What will be different is that it will be the weight of something that fits. And there is a difference that cannot be overstated between carrying something that fits and carrying something that does not. The first produces meaning. The second produces only the weariness we named at the beginning. This is what the scripture means when it says that all things work together for the good of those who are called according to his purpose. Not that all things felt like good, but that nothing, not the years in rooms too small for what you carry, not the silences that lasted longer than seemed survivable, not the false names, not the closed doors, not the grief of the path required, was outside the sovereign architecture of a purpose moving through all of it. The design was never interrupted. Every piece of what felt like loss was in the economy of the eternal preparation. And the preparation is now complete. If this word has reached the part of you that was waiting to be reached, carry it forward. Share it with the one walking their appointed path in silence, who needs to hear that the silence is not the end of the story. Subscribe so that what comes next can find you when you need it. Give this a like so it can travel further than it would otherwise reach, and leave 444 in the comments. Not as a number, as a declaration before heaven and earth. As the voice of your commissioned soul saying, I receive this, I am the one this was written for. I am done explaining myself into dimensions of spaces that were never built for what I carry. I am walking forward in full alignment with the assignment written over me before the world gave me a name. The appointed hour is not arriving. It has arrived. You are already in it. The design is complete. The preparation is finished. The life that was written for you is waiting to be lived. Walk into it as the soul consecrated for this hour. Walk into it with everything you have endured and everything you have become because of it. This is your moment. This is your time. This is the life that was always yours. Together we rise.